Morning people, welcome back to F Politics. Grooming gangs, the topic that your right-wing reform voting uncle says the left is too scared to talk about because it might make minorities look bad. Well, let's talk about it. First off, what are we talking about when we say grooming gangs? We're talking about groups of men who engage in child sexual exploitation. That's what it's actually called. They find underage girls, form relationships with them, gain their trust, then introduce them to their friends, then coerce them using alcohol, drugs, and threats to get them to have sex with other people. We are talking about rape here. Now, why is it a scandal in UK politics? It's a scandal because in the early 2000s in towns like Rotherham and Rochdale, despite many girls, victims, reporting their abuse, the authorities ignored them, either dismissing their claims or arresting them as prostitutes themselves. And according to the 2015 report into Rotherham by Baroness Louise Casey, authorities also ignored the reports by these victims against Pakistani men due to a misplaced sense of political correctness. Translation: white authorities didn't want to go after Pakistani men for fear of being called racist. Now let's be clear, in the history of all civil rights movements, no anti-racist campaigner has ever said that part of their cause involved allowing pedophiles to roam free. Because allowing pedophiles to go unarrested within minority communities does not protect those communities. We are talking about white authorities thinking they are protecting their own white reputations. But this is what has allowed the Grooming Gangs scandal to become a rallying call for the far right, because they are now equating anti-racism with helping pedophiles. The irony of which cannot be overstated because the original report blamed the failure to protect those girls on a failure to understand what anti-racism is actually about. But this week, 10 years later, Baroness Casey has produced another report, and this is the headline you'll be hearing.
Baroness Casey's audit examined local level data in 3 police force areas, Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire and South Yorkshire, where high-profile cases involving Pakistani heritage men have long been investigated and reported, and there they found the suspects of group-based child sexual offences were disproportionately likely to be Asian men. And she refers to examples of organisations avoiding the topic altogether for fear of appearing racist or raising community tensions.
For starters, if the aim of the authorities at the heart of the Grooming Gang scandal was to avoid inflaming racial tensions, great fucking job. But yeah, the headline you'll be seeing is that there's an overrepresentation of Pakistani men among grooming gang suspects. But that was mainly from data from 3 local police forces, and yet you're not seeing this in the headlines.
Baroness Casey's audit confirms that ethnicity data is not recorded for 2/3 of grooming gang perpetrators, and she says it is not good enough to support any statements about the ethnicity of group-based child sexual exploitation offenders at the national level.
And Baroness Casey points out that it's precisely because we haven't got accurate, reliable data on the ethnicity of grooming gang suspects that has allowed right-wing politicians to weaponize this issue.
On issues that are as searing as people's race, when actually we know the prejudice and racism that people of colour experience in this country, to not get how you treat that data right, actually I think is a different level of public irresponsibility. Sorry to put it so bluntly, I didn't put it that bluntly yesterday, but I think it's particularly important if you are collecting those sorts of issues to get them 100% right. You know, my view is collect something or don't collect something. For God's sakes, don't half collect it. That's a bloody disaster.
Baroness Casey also expresses her frustration that we have more accurate data for the parts of the country where there are higher populations of Asian ethnicity people, but not for the rest of the country.
If I know it can be collected in large police forces effectively, why can't I collect that nationally? Do you see me added to the sort of sense, oh dear God, what on earth have you done here?
And this is dangerous because it allows right-wing people like Nigel Farage to push their favourite message, which is that black and brown people are a threat to our women and children.
Open door, unrestricted immigration to, in this case, Pakistan. And they bring with them a culture that degrades women.
And this is because everybody's playing with incomplete data, but even the grooming gangs thing itself is itself cherry-picking data.
If you look at the data on child sexual exploitation suspects and offenders, it's disproportionately Asian heritage. If you look at the data for child abuse, it is not disproportionate and it is white men.
Now, at the national level, based on the flawed data that we have, which Baroness Casey says is not reliable enough to use to form any conclusions, it does show that the largest group of grooming gang suspects is white men. But let's even say that after this national inquiry that the government just announced, that it does turn out that Pakistani men are disproportionately the ones convicted of this crime. We already know that sex-based crimes against children are mainly committed by white men, so what we're talking about here is, why are Asian pedophiles more likely than white pedophiles to commit their crimes as a group? B, as was pointed out in the report, the reporting rates for sex-based crimes at any age are terrible. Now, why is that? You know the phrase, everything is about sex except for sex, sex is about power? I think that comes into this. Because as this report points out,
The audit describes victims as young as 10, often those in care, or children with learning or physical disabilities, being singled out for grooming precisely because of their vulnerability.
the victims were chosen because our system, especially in the early 2000s, makes people with their characteristics more vulnerable and less likely to be listened to. Because they're young, because they're working class, because they're female. But on the flip side, that same system is more likely to arrest black and brown suspects. We know the police are racist. Baroness Casey knows the police are racist. She was the one who wrote the report showing that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally racist. The government data shows that black and brown people are more likely to be arrested, but less likely to be convicted after their arrest, which means the police are more likely to arrest a black or brown person without having enough evidence to convict them, which means reports against black and brown people are taken more seriously by the police. So a system where over 90% of sexual abuse goes unreported and the power dynamic between the victim and the attacker is a key factor is going to have an effect on who gets convicted. But we're still missing the point entirely about how you actually protect these women and girls because of the faulty data, which has allowed this to be weaponized into a race issue.
Because we haven't done the job right around collecting ethnicity properly, it means that, in a way, the bigger issue, dare I say it, which is men's violence towards women, is in danger of being lost. And if we're still arguing over data around ethnicity, we won't get to the bigger issue, which is, no matter what ethnicity, religion, age, or whatever, why do men commit these offences against girls?
That's what this is about. Men hurting girls. Women and girls not being listened to when they report about men hurting women and girls. A system that allows men to get away with hurting women and girls. For example,
Grooming cases have been dropped or downgraded from rape to lesser charges because a 13 to 15-year-old is perceived to have been in love with or had consented to sex with the perpetrator.
and the way the right has played politics with this is unbelievable, because for years, progressives and people on the left have said, believe women. And then we have a scandal where the authorities haven't believed the female victims of abuse. And then the same people who complained about the Me Too movement, who hang out with abuser after abuser after abuser after abuser, then claim to be the champions of these women. Like, the fundamental issue in this entire scandal is women who were abused were not believed and taken seriously by the authorities. And yet the main party that is capitalizing off of this is the Reform Party, who just 6 months ago did this on national TV.
So I'm on his side. I disagree with what else is
So
saying.
you don't think he kicked her then? Is that what you're saying?
I'm trusting James. He's bang on the money, and I think that what he says is right. He was there. The court wasn't there. The Times weren't there.
Well, the victim
And
was
frankly-
there as well, right?
Yeah, and they're going to have a disagreement.
Like, the deputy leader of the Reform Party said he didn't believe the victim in a case where one of his MPs was convicted of repeatedly kicking her. And yet supposedly that's the party who people are now running towards to solve the problem of not believing women and girls who are victims of abuse. Like, they turned one serious and devastating problem into two problems that make each other worse. Because the failure to arrest grooming gang suspects created a scandal which racists have capitalized on. And the racism that has come from this has politically clouded the issue and taken the spotlight off the real problem, which is misogyny and a lack of empathy and respect for women and girls. Now, there are positive steps happening as a result of this.
So in the Crime and Policing Bill, we are introducing the long overdue mandatory reporting duty. So we will change the law to ensure that adults who engage in penetrative sex with a child under 16 face the most serious charge of rape. And we will work closely with the CPS and the police to ensure there are safeguards for consensual teenage relationships.
So at least that's something. I'm Femi. Make sure you follow F Politics so politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.